David, I got a little bit of a rev last week, you might remember, for not starting on time. So we started a little earlier this week. We've got a lovely lineup, haven't we? Taste the Toit, you know, Taste from Coronation. He's been stepping out into the public arena for the first time in many years recently. I guess it's a reflection of concern that many people have about what's happening in our country.
Of course, and I think, you know, with children and grandchildren in the country, everybody's concerned about the future. And I think if we don't speak up, we don't let our views known, nothing's going to happen. And I think the more we talk, hopefully someone's going to pick up on what we're saying. Because, Alec, there are going to be solutions. It's just a matter of sitting down around a table and finding a solution. So I can understand where Taste is coming from. He looked good there. I was looking at the picture. It looks like a nice cape setting there. You know, very eloquent setting.
You'll be able to ask him about that a little later. An asset management company, and then Herman Mashaba, who for many people is the great hope for the political future of South Africa. Outspoken, a great track record when he was mayor of Johannesburg, anti-corruption fighter, and of course self-made entrepreneur. I hope he's not our version of Donald Trump, because we know what happened to this. But he'll be talking to us later for his political party, which scored a bit of a coup in the past week when Fakey Mentor joined them. So I suppose everybody's vote is up for grabs at the moment, Dave. And why not Herman?
Well, anybody who's going to provide a solution, you know, or some way forward, I think it's going to attract votes. And, you know, it's something we said the other day, Alec, is that what Trump and a lot of political heads don't understand is that they don't get in on 100% votes. Some of them get in on only 50%, and yet very few recognize that there are other people, that there are other interested parties, and somehow we never, you know, we never have a voice. And it's something that concerns me. You've got to listen to all voices. You know, you might push your own agenda, but you've still got to listen to what other people have to say, and somehow find a middle course or a path that satisfies everyone,
including the people who actually didn't vote. And then at 1:45, we've got the big insurance story. We're talking to Willem Latergan, who's the chief executive of Hollard Insure, and we'll have Ryan Woolley, who's the guy on the other side of the fence who's been representing companies on this whole business interruption insurance. David, my sense on this is that if they had to meet all the policies, the short-term insurance companies, that they're exposed to, in other words, if the courts go against them, they could all go bankrupt. They don't seem to have enough money to settle it. I was talking to a friend in the past week who owns a large restaurant, well, not a large restaurant group, but upmarket restaurant group. He says their exposure in 3 months, their claim 65 million alone. Now think about, and that's just one small part of this whole thing. Could wipe them out, so no doubt they're taking a hard line.
Alec, you know, I walked through Melrose Arch on the weekend, which is made up of restaurants, most of which were closed. Those that were open were generally maybe 20% full, 30% full. Now, this has been going on for 3-4 months. Not only will the restaurants go, but the landlords will go as well. And a whole area like Melrose Arch will just disintegrate. You know, if people don't come back. So it was never intended this way. This was never intended. You know, it was always intended that government or otherwise, in this case, maybe even the insurance companies, the banks, would make sure that we got through this period. You know, that we were able to bridge this. It's not going to happen. And for me, that's the scary part of it all, is that no one seems to care, or no one seems to be taking the right kind of action to get us through this very difficult time, as we've seen now with someone like Santam.
Very, very interesting, all of those issues. But first, let's just make sure that we got the tech in order. David, our general manager, Stuart Lohman, is making sure that the controls are all in place, Stu.
Excellent. Thanks a lot, Alec. Yes, quickly, just for those new to the webinars, if you can hear my voice and see Alec and David on screen, can you give a high five, a little high five button on your control panel on the right-hand side? Let's see if those come through. There we go. I got a few of those coming through. Excellent. Thanks a lot. And Alec likes to keep it's very conversational. So if you just under there's a questions drop-down bar. If you can put your questions in for the relevant guests, Alec will pass them on and we can get the conversation going. So thanks, Alec. All good this side.
Brilliant. And I see there's a question here already from John Hardy, who wants to talk about 2U, Spotify, Cloudflare, and Slack. Well, that's tomorrow. We're doing the update of the portfolio once a month. We do it on a Tuesday, last Tuesday of the month, and I'll take you through the whole portfolio, including those. Slack and 2U are coming into our portfolio. Oh, I can see David. Crumbs, what is this guy doing?
I know. Yeah.
Wow. Who knows?
I prefer it to gold.
Oh, don't talk gold. I'm getting spammed, not spammed. I'm getting given a lot of people who say, "Why are you such a moron and you missed the gold one?" Well, I missed Tesla as well. There we go. But just generally speaking, can we start on gold, David, from your side?
It's astonishing. It's the one thing about markets, when they gather momentum, they gather momentum. And at the moment, it's all gold. And people are talking up gold for whatever reason. The dollar is under enormous amount of pressure at the moment. If you look at the euro, it's almost 117, understanding that not more than a month ago, or it was down at 108, 109 against the dollar, the pound at 128. So even the rand is strong, but gold is just running and is now 1950 heading towards 2000. So it gathers it becomes a popular type of investment, and everyone runs after it. The problem is that when things do start getting better, you've always got to find someone who's a bigger fool than you to go and buy it from you, and that's the issue, as opposed to your Slack and all the other companies, Spotify, which are generally operating businesses. So that's the danger you have when you go into gold. When things start coming right, which they'll happen, you've got to find someone who's going to buy your shares, not necessarily your shares, but the actual physical gold from you. So
I saw that the original Mr. Gold in South Africa, you tweeted that he passed away, Clive Roffey.
Yeah, that's absolute tragedy. Clive, I mean, he'd been pushing gold for as long as so many other people who are listening to this show have been, and he died under tragic circumstances. I haven't quite got to the bottom of what he did have a motor crash, but I'm not sure whether that was the reason. But we picked it up by pure chance. He died. He was buried, I think, last Tuesday. And very, very sad circumstances. And a man, if ever there was a gold bull, that was Clive. And a very erudite man. He was, I think, a metallurgist, but a PhD in metallurgy, and very well read. But he was a chartist, and he loved his trade.
Well, it is a tragedy, I guess, particularly that this is the time when Clive would have been saying to the rest of us, "I told you so." Well, are you looking at gold, David? Is it something that makes sense to you now, given the run that we've had and given the environment that we're living in?
If I was a trader, I'd get on the back of the momentum, but not as an investment case. I'm not. I like operating businesses. I prefer the companies you were talking about, but I'm not going to ignore that it's in an uptrend, and I'm not going to talk it down, because I think all precious metals in these kind of circumstances there's so much bad news, there's so much disturbing news, at the back, which is the ideal situation for gold to run. But you've got to understand, you've got to understand the characteristics of gold. The same thing as in 2011, we hit 1850 when things got better. It went all the way back to 1200, and that's the kind of cycles you see in gold. So probably you're getting to a level now to offload, or very soon to offload. So I wouldn't get too over involved.
I suppose if you weren't in, don't try and jump in now. It's like trying to catch a runaway train. But David, I asked you to have a look at two things ahead of today's discussion. The one is 1MBB, this Malaysian fund that Goldman Sachs went around the world selling, raising $6.5 billion, and it's now all come to a very, very sticky end. And it's going to cost Goldman's probably as much as they raised in bonds. They've now paid the Malaysian government $4 billion, and they've got a settlement which they almost did last year with the US authorities for another $2 billion. But it tells us so much, that story, doesn't it?
Well, it's you know, you've got to understand the characters involved, and I think Mr. Joe Low, you know, we call him J Lo, but there's a prettier version of J Lo. But I mean, this Joe Low is JHOLO, I think LOW, who was one of the principal characters involved. And with the help of Goldman Sachs, with the help of a person at Goldman who's actually admitted guilt, siphoned off, I don't know, 2.5–3 billion. I don't know how much they siphoned off.
4.5, David. 4.5 according to Wall Street Journal.
And started to spend it on all kinds of things. You know, J Lo's got, I think, one of the biggest yachts around. I think it's even bigger than Abramovich or all the other people. You know, they always measure the yachts by how long they are and whether they can fit into the harbors and so on. But and also financed movies, financed art, and just bought. And he's still running around without having been caught. But I think that it did reflect, as we know, very, very badly on Goldman. They raised, I think, $6.5 billion in bonds and that. And at one stage, I think the Prime Minister was also accused of being involved. I think he might have been let off by now.
No. He is right in the middle, David.
Yeah.
And there he is. There he is on the. Oops, he will be there soon. Can you see it now? Can you see him now?
Yeah. Because I know he returned to Malaysia, but I don't know whether he returned under a cloud and still has to face accusations and charges. But Alec, you've got to get to the heart of what a development fund is, and that's the problem. It's an investment fund, and when they say a development fund, it's really to help businesses develop. You know, that's the reason they put it in. I would imagine that where a country raises a development fund, it's for businesses within their own country that that they want to spend on. You know, it's there to help businesses thrive, not to go out and finance movies and buy yachts and do things like that. So it's an absolute tragic story, and has been a very deep embarrassment for Goldman. You know, the fact that they're settling. They disclaim any charges against them, but I think 20 of their officials in the UK office, I think, had charges against them or criminal charges against them. So we still got to, you know, the fact that they've settled is going to maybe take the courts away from us. But I think as time goes by, we're going to hear more and more about how the money was used and which principal characters or which characters were principal in this absolute debacle. And it's very, very tragic. And it just comes, you know, the one thing we're not short of in financial markets are situations like this. You know, we've got plenty of them to talk about and to make movies about and to to occupy media.
Well, there's a lot more to the story. Mr. Najib actually has got 43 charges that he's facing. He's playing, surprise, surprise, the Stalingrad strategy as per Jacob Zuma. Same thing. And the first of the charges that they're nailing him on is $11.5 million that went into his personal bank account, quite apart from the fact that his stepson took billions. Anyway, we'll talk about that in a moment. Just before we pick up with Taste of Toy, David, Steinhoff this morning came out with a statement about its settlement with for all of the fraud that goes on there. Could you make sense of it?
No, because it seems to be it seems to be short of the amounts that are being claimed. And I think they're trying to reach a settlement. You know, they have a big stake in Pepkor still, and they're using Pepkor shares to try and settle some of the claims against them. But I can't reconcile, in my mind, there was a huge amount, you know, significantly higher than this. And I think they are making certain settlements, you know, to various personnel. They say that after that, they'll still have about 50% of Pepkor shares. But in my mind, I think I only came to an amount of about 16 billion rand, which seems to be pretty short. What they are saying is if the full claims are made against him, they will not survive. If they are able to reach a settlement, they'll be able to remove the contingent liabilities off their balance sheet. What that means is really we can get on with running the business with what we've got. As long as contingent liabilities hang on the business, there's always a chance that they can't progress, because no one's going to lend their money and no one's going to raise money against those things which are overhanging them. So I think that's what they're trying to get rid of, reach settlement. But in my mind, it seems pretty short. But I don't know the principal characters. I think Tace is down there in the Cape. He might know a lot more than we do about, who's involved and what they're prepared to accept in order to.
Maybe he bumped into Marcus Jooste in a restaurant. In a moment. But look at Pepkor. It looks really cheeky, because the price that they're setting that Steinhoff want to settle the Pepkor shares at is $15, and as you can see, the share price there, it's trading just above 1,000. So surely, David, if they're going to issue all these extra shares, then the little slice that you might have of this Pepkor pie would presumably get smaller and smaller. And would it be worth even 1,000 rand? I suppose that's going to take quite a lot of analysis to get there.
Sure. Look, the price of 15 rand was round about March. That might have been the time that they started to negotiate. But, to issue the shares now to them at 15 rand and they're now at 10 rand, I mean, it takes a big slice off the settlement. But, that's up to the people who are going to, who might have entered into some kind of agreement. But this is another saga that we're going to have to follow. The shares have gone up 6% on the market this morning, but I'm not quite sure. That would only be on the basis that the settlement's received and that Steinhoff can take whatever few assets it's got left and try to build a business again, which I think is going to take a long, hard task to get back to anywhere close to where they were, if they ever do get there.
It's so interesting that Steinhoff actually offloaded Conforama, which was supposedly such a great company, for nothing, for nil. It actually gave it away. I don't know if you picked that up, Lot. No.
Is it the entire? Because it's I don't know what they've got left, because if you start going through the assets, there's not a huge amount that they'll be able to build any kind of business on it. Whether or not they're just trying to get to a point where they actually liquidate the underlying assets. There's the market value or the asset value is no more than a few billion on the JSE, and that's in rand. So I really don't know what's left there.
Let's bring Tace in now. Tace, I know, has been listening to this. Tace du Toit, co-founder of Coronation Fund Managers. Also there we go. Nice to see you, Tace. Also still in the investment markets now, a veteran and very outspoken in various ways. But that whole Steinhoff saga, Tace, you're in Stellenbosch. What's going on? What's the talk of the town?
Alec, thank you. David, it's nice to see you too. If you apparently go to Landsrack, you'll bump into him. I don't frequent Landsrack because that was gotten ill-gotten gains. So I understand that that's Marcus Jooste's head office. But it's interesting that frauds seem to happen in 6.5 billion, because the fraud that was committed at Steinhoff is 6.5 billion euros. The Wirecard guys have recently been apprehended and taken into custody. 3 years later, Mr. Jooste is still free. But I think we've got a lot to talk about, but let me elaborate a little bit, because I actually think it's the proposal that's put forward is a very sensible one. Keep in mind that there are 90 claimants. The total amount that's being claimed is 7 billion euros. And that does not include the bank debt. If you actually include all the bank debt, it's a lot more. That in addition is north of 10 billion euros. So the likelihood that Steinhoff can go belly up is significant. So I actually think it's a significant achievement by Louis du Preez and the board and all their colleagues to have come forward with a settlement. And I'm sure if you look, or I'm not sure, I've seen the announcement, and if you actually go and look at it, you'll see that the settlements on average is about 12 cents in the rand, and some of the guys are getting as much as 36 cents in the rand. So my advice to them would be to accept it, because otherwise it's going to go into liquidations, and then the banks will stand in the front of the queue. So I actually think it's quite a good proposal.
Thanks for that insight, because both David and I, after reading through the documentation, were in rather more confused than when we started. But from your perspective, the last time we spoke on the 7th of May, moving to to a different area, you said that Cyril Ramaphosa, please open up the economy. Now that we have that he has kind of opened up the economy. Certainly here in Gauteng, if you drive around, it's not quite what it used to be before COVID-19, but it's not far off it. Lots of people on the roads, lots of people out and about. It is, however, being criticized because of the surge in infections of COVID-19. Have you changed your mind or your view?
Alec, thank you. I think we must just sort of give a little bit of context, because at the time, and I still am a very, very concerned citizen, our government finances are in the doldrums. We are losing on revenue big time. There are lots of expenses. Civil servant salaries are still at all-time high. So my comment at the time, and still is, that we actually need to do something to get the economy going. And part of that is opening up the economy. I mean, I see you've brought up my picture in my sort of bio. And as a loyal and a true South African that's been in South Africa for a long time, and with kids and grandchildren, you actually want this country to work. So my comments at the time was, let us enable the entrepreneurs, and I see you've got Herman Mashaba a little bit later on. Let's enable the entrepreneurs to make their magic. They are the people that employ hundreds, thousands of other people. And a friend of mine recently said that we should actually in South Africa think of awarding medals to those people that create jobs. A bronze medal for someone that creates 100 jobs, a silver medal for someone that creates 1,000 jobs, and a gold medal for 10,000. And I think that must be our aim. And who creates jobs? Not the government, not the unions, but entrepreneurs. So we must enable the entrepreneurs to do their magic. So that was my point of departure at the time with the suggestions that I've made. So it was more about what do we need to do to get the economy going, rather than saying opening it up.
Just to remind our Biznews Premium members who are in the webinar today, you can pose questions. That's why it's only for Biznews Premium. Otherwise, we would open it to the whole community, but then there'd be just too many people on the webinar. So please take advantage of it. There's a little question mark on the screen that on your control panel, and just type in your question and I'll pose it to the various of our guests. I'm very pleased you sent me this picture of yourself and your grandson, because in Magnus Haystack's recent article for Biznews, he said that he thinks, as he has been saying for nearly a decade, South Africans should take all their money offshore to secure their futures. And he said, Taster Toy agrees with me now. Do you?
Look, I think that, I mean, I'd like to go back. I mean, I don't know whether you can recall, but David, I'm sure, can recall. We've had wonderful periods when new listings were coming to the South African stock market, whether it was 87 or the early 90s. I mean, many of the companies that you talk to today, whether it's Discovery, RMB, Coronation, PSG, were all sort of initiated at the dawn of the new South Africa. And it actually gave us a wonderful opportunity as investors to invest in those companies. And you may know that Towers Watson said, and Lester, that for the last 107 years, till about 2015, South Africa was the top performing stock market in the world, actually. And it's really in the last 5 years that things have gone pear-shaped. And my first choice would be to invest in South African companies, but the universe is shrinking. We don't see the new listings. They've been clogged up by red tape. And it's a pity because, I mean, even Pepkor, you spoke about Pepkor a little bit earlier. The reason why the share price ticked up is because they've made their trading results known, and it's down only by 17%. It's a fantastic business. Unfortunately, it got contaminated by the fraudster USA, but it's a fantastic business. So there are good businesses in South Africa, but we look at the Rand price, and then you move on to what's happening to government finances. I always say, when you talk about the currency, that is the share price of a country. And at the moment, our share price is declining. Yes, it has recovered from 19.5 to 16.5, but it's a long, long way from where it was. And the share price of South Africa, the currency, is saying something is wrong. And if we look at the government finances, you know what is wrong. We lack revenue and we've got lots of expenses. And when that happens, the currency has the potential to slide. So irrespective of how well you may do in rand terms, in the real hard currency terms, you're going to go backwards. And I mean, I'm just looking here at the numbers that Magnus had put up. For the 5 years till the end of June, the all-share index did 1.6% per annum in rand terms. In dollar terms, it had gone backwards by 6.8%. So you can understand where Magnus is coming from, because we also have a responsibility to deliver investment returns to our investors, and we can't be blindly loyal. And the investment universe in South Africa has shrunk tremendously, because I think the number of listed companies have declined from 600 to 350. And if you actually take out Naspers, the picture has been a lot more disastrous.
Yeah, indeed. If Naspers was not there, one can only imagine what would have happened to people's savings in South Africa, or the pensions that are in the country. I'm just going to pick up or pull up
and if I may add to that, Alec, is the South Africa is a poor country, so we need to protect our savings. And if the rand depreciates, our savings become less or worth less and less, and then we must apprehend the culprits that defraud the country, be it from revenue or from savings. And it's just staggering that our president the other night said that they're going to have a new task force to make sure that there is no fraud as far as COVID tenders is concerned. We've yet to see a single person apprehended and taken into custody, whether it is the Guptas, whether it's people at Bosasa, whether it's people at the Praza, whether it is Steinhoff, whether it is, I mean, there are many, many others. We don't seem to prosecute these people. And unless you actually set an example whereby you act against the culprits so that you can reinstill confidence, and it's all about confidence. Entrepreneurs want to operate in an environment where there is optimism, confidence, where they've got certainty about rules, about taxes, and the fact that if you cross the red line, you go to jail.
Yeah, I just put up for an instant there the rand chart, and it shows exactly what you were talking about a bit earlier, although it has improved in the most recent time from 18 or 19. So Jace, as a nice segue perhaps into Herman, who's very, very outspoken on the whole issue of corruption. The fact that South Africa has got a Steinhoff saga scandal, and now we know we can actually quantify it, because if the company is only able to pay, as you say, between 15 cents and 30 cents in the rand, or 35 cents in the rand, depending on who the liabilities are to, then you can kind of put a number to it. What do you believe can be done, though, given the circumstances we're in, where the NPA, we hear from Shamila Botoy, who says that she's so overwhelmed and she doesn't have the greatest of staff. Can the private sector, in cases like this, in an emergency like this, not get involved?
Yeah, I think a couple of things, Alec. I think Steinhoff must be commended for the fact that they have actually been putting their hand into their pocket, and they have been funding, as far as I understand, the National Prosecuting Authority's sort of expenses as far as PwC is concerned. So well done to them. Then I think that there's an obligation on us as Joe Soap and the common guy to actually say, we did not in our name, because I mean, the government or the NPA doesn't seem to prosecute, and then we actually need to take a stance. And it's not an insignificant amount of money that's been lost. I mean, if you look at the share price decline, the loss is about 300 billion rand. If you look at the fraud that had been committed, as I said, was 6.5 billion euros. And convert that into current day rands, that's 130 billion rand. I mean, how is it possible that 3 years later, no official charges being laid, no one has been taken into custody? It's just insane.
We do know, though, that the 1MDB Malaysian story has taken 5 years, and that's with the full force of the US securities or the US Justice Department. And we're about, 3 years now, coming up for 3 years since Steinhoff bellied up. I guess the part that is aggravating everybody is exactly what you said earlier, that Marcus Jooste continues as an emperor at Lanzerac.
Yeah, I think you've summarized it well. I mean, it's just unbelievable. Hopefully, eventually the wheels will turn slowly, but they will turn efficiently, and hopefully we'll see the prosecutions that we should see.
Just stay with us for a moment, if you would, Tace, because we're bringing Herman Mashaba in now. Herman has a wonderful pedigree as an entrepreneur. Herman, if you can just click your video camera and your microphone. There we go. And the People's Dialogue, and we'll talk about that in some detail now, Herman, really does have a corruption manifesto almost. That this is the biggest thing in that South Africans want to know about. But from what Tace has said a moment ago, let's just say that you win the election in 2024 and you become the president of South Africa, and you can get in a time machine and go back to where we are right now. What would you do with the King of Lanzerac?
Well, I think the first thing I would really do, like I did when I took over the city of Johannesburg, establish a team of top investigators, bring back the scorpions. I can tell you the first 3 months of my administration, I'll re-establish the scorpions and to really work with other agencies in the world to assist us with the capacitation. One thing that's actually quite good about South Africa is that we do have the expertise. We've got committed South Africans. Unfortunately, they've been sidelined by the ANC patronage network. If you look at our civil service dominated by the patronage network. And I think for me, it's actually it goes even deeper where ANC has penetrated even the private sector. If you look at why and how big business has been afraid of ANC for all these years because of using COSATU threats and really using state power to threaten big business, including actually using race as a card, so that when you're a white person, you raise the issue immediately to silence you. They take you on the basis of race. So I think we need to dismantle this patronage network. So as I set up a unit to deal with this corruption immediately also, and I give this commitment to people of South Africa that within the first 6 months, we need to get rid of ANC patronage network within the entire machinery of the state. Put in professional public service, people who are there not because of who they know, because of what they know. And we do have committed South Africans. I was beginning to enjoy success of our tough work. 900 arrests in the city of Johannesburg, 800 senior officials are fired. And I was obviously accused, and it was very strange that even some people in the media were accusing me of paging ANC patronage. And I can assure people of South Africa, come 2021, I'm going to intensify the paging of patronage network. Come 2024, if we remove ANC, we will even fast track that process. But if you are willing to serve society, you'll remain. If you want to serve political parties, you are out. And I'm not going to compromise or apologize to anyone about such an approach.
Tace, before you go, just perhaps to pick up on what Herman said there about business in South Africa being scared of the ANC due to the strong arming.
Alec, I'm Herman. Nice hearing you, and thank you what you're doing for South Africa. I agree. Unfortunately, when a middle-aged white person like me becomes vocal, we quite easily being marginalized because we are the white privilege. And yes, we were. And I've often apologized in the past. And I think, I mean, I don't want to sort of take up time, but yes, what happened was wrong. But we are there. We would like to make a contribution. We would like to make South Africa a better place. That's why, as you said a bit earlier, I don't typically want to do this thing, but unless our voices are heard, I mean, there's a saying that if good people stay quiet, bad things happen. And I think that's our responsibility.
Tace du Toit, co-founder of Coronation, thanks for your contribution today. Herman, I guess that's a wonderful way to pick up on the People's Dialogue. What exactly is happening there? You in your press statement, you said recently you're going to be officially launching at the end of August. You're getting 1,000 people a day signing up to help as volunteers. Extraordinary.
Absolutely. I think it's really quite pleasing. Though I like to really be honest with you, I'm really very nervous. What I think I need to do, and actually yesterday I was with some of my advisors to really look at starting to conscientize South Africans ahead of the removal of the ANC, because the day when we're going to remove the ANC, whoever is going to take over is going to take over a bankrupt country, a system that's really destroyed. Look at the city of Joburg or Durban or Pretoria. You know, so the infrastructure backlog. So I was talking to them that as they are really, as a matter of urgency, start putting together teams that can really work on looking at the infrastructure backlog, so that I start sharing this with society in advance, so that I can manage the expectations. Because you can imagine if you remove ANC tomorrow, with these high expectations, high unemployment, in a country that is spending billions every day on servicing debt and so forth. So I believe very strongly that I need to start putting all these measures in place so that people really understand that this project of unseating the ANC, yes, it's an answer, but we'll be out of this trouble 15, 20 years down the line. I can tell you, I won't solve, no one will be able to solve the damage that ANC has caused in 10 years. It's humanly impossible, because you have to really cut down on state infrastructure. I mean, size of the state. We need less than 20 ministers immediately, so that do we need, and I was saying to them yesterday, do we need provinces? If I look at just by doing away with provinces, you can probably save 20 billion rands or so that you can push into municipalities, push into infrastructure. So we need money to be able to do those things. We need to spend money on education. Make sure that 15, 20, 25 years down the line, we have top scientists, credible accountants and so forth. You don't produce accountants and engineers overnight. This process takes time and it requires the money. How about getting the confidence of the international community? Because South Africa, we are, in fact, honestly, I believe, we are worse off than even during the apartheid days in terms of our credibility. South Africa never used to travel quite extensive during the dark days of this country. I was privileged to travel. South Africa was the scum of the world. Today, South Africa is, I think it's even worse, because people don't really trust us. They see me, more especially as a black person, they think you're a rapist, you're an abuser of women and so forth. So this is really what the world actually think about us. And are they unfair? Unfortunately, to some extent, these are issues that we have to really demonstrate to the world that we people of integrity, we are not rapists, we are not murderers and so forth. But people are not going to believe us overnight. It's going to take many years.
Herman, tonight we are expecting to get the announcement of the International Monetary Fund 70 billion rand that they're going to give the country for COVID-19 relief. Almost a dress rehearsal to what is likely to have to happen in the future, because this country will need to get money from somewhere. And as you said earlier, the reputation is such, junk status, that there aren't going to be people queuing up to put money into South Africa. When you hear tonight what the government will react to the IMF, do you think this is the start of maybe a turnaround for the country?
No, absolutely. In fact, I think I'm concerned. I mean, if there's the ANC patronage and thieves can steal and deprive people of food parcels, I mean, which you can imagine up to what level these people have gone to. There's 70 billion rands, I can tell you, these hyenas are waiting for it. And they're not going to hesitate. because they know there are no consequences. Our criminal justice system is totally captured, with the exception of our judiciary. So we have to find ways to fast track private prosecution, because I can tell you the NPA, the Hawks, they're not going to prosecute the ANC people. We have to then really use the courts for private prosecution. So we need the resources. I'm putting measures in place. And unfortunately, at the moment, I'm still funding 95% of the work I'm doing from my family. So that's why I'm asking South Africans, please come to the party. I'll be accountable. We need, before ANC completely collapses this country like the ZANU-PF did in Zimbabwe, let's use our courts to take this ANC criminals who are in cabinet, who are in parliament. Let's use the courts for private prosecution. That's the only thing I can see that can save us, because they are not going to accept bringing elections forward. That you can forget. But they can't stop us from taking to court for private prosecution. But you need the resources.
The election next year, municipal election, will you be ready to contest it?
Absolutely, we'll be ready, but I would not really be ready to contest all 278 municipalities. At the moment, I'm targeting 3, that is Johannesburg, Tshwane, and Ekurhuleni. We might consider 1 or 2 others, depending whether those municipalities are winnable. Also, if I can identify credible leadership, ethical leadership, because I would not want people who are going to embarrass us. And also then I can have the resources to contest those municipalities. But for sure, with my family's resources, we'll put money towards contesting this 3 if the business community doesn't want to come to the party. Fortunately enough, ordinary South Africans are coming, giving us 500 there, 250. It helps. But I'm committed to ensure that we can save this country. I don't have anywhere else to really go. And if I sit back and complain at dinner parties, I can tell you, Alec, we'll lose everything as a country. We will be like Zimbabwe in a few years' time. We won't even be able to produce maize meal. Look at a country 25 years ago used to produce enough food for the entire region. Today, Zimbabwe cannot produce maize meal. One of the easiest product to farm. They can't produce maize meal.
Last week, Fakey Mentor joined you. She had quite a pedigree in the ANC. Then she was a whistleblower and frozen out there. Have you got others like her who have expressed interest in joining your team?
Look, Alec, I made it really very clear from day one when I launched the People's Dialogue in December that depending at the time, I said, if we get the support, and secondly, if we can establish the core values. Now that we've got the core values, we've got 2.4 million people behind us. We don't want to really be a party of recycled politicians. But however, there are great South Africans out there who, when it was not fashionable to be out there and outspoken, we will accept them. But fortunately enough, Alec, one of the core values of our political party is electoral reform. And we're not fortunately we're not going to wait for the ANC to run primaries. For us, next year, contesting the 3 local municipalities, all our councillors, including for me, I'm making myself to be the mayoral candidate for Johannesburg. But at the end of the day, our supporters, our members are the ones who are going to elect us to be a public representative of our party. You are not going to be elected by us behind closed doors. Public reps from the mayor up to the councillor. Every ward will decide who's the competent person to actually be a public representative. We are going to force long-term all the other parties to follow the same model, because it will be embarrassing for them to still be using the old model of public representatives being chosen behind closed doors. But a system like that does not suit the ANC. But it is not about the ANC, it's about the country. We are going to really practice that kind of transparency, that for you to really be a councillor, let the people in your ward decide.
It's so interesting because every other part of the world has been radically affected by the fourth industrial revolution, technology, now COVID-19. Why not politics? And Herman, I'm sure there are many who are listening to this who would like to support you. Just very quickly, your core principles. You said 2.4 million people are supporting you. Where did they come from, and what is making them go? What is making them come?
Well, what happened is, Alec, when I conceived the idea of the People's Dialogue, I called it the second CODESA. Remember, before the 1994 elections, we had the CODESA in Captain Park. And that CODESA, you look at it 26 years later, the politicians negotiated a good deal for themselves, but not for civil society. So basically, I then said, you know what, spoke to my family, I said, let us give a gift to our nation where we can get civil society to be the one to shape the future of the country. And, you know, when I requested funding from my family, I said, if we can have 500,000 people giving us the mandate, it'll be a nice size to start a political party. But based on non-negotiable core values of non-racialism. We want a South Africa that racialist. If you're looking for a racial party, go somewhere else. We don't even come and waste our time. We want aggressively to work towards building a non-racial South Africa. We unapologetically support free market economy, where the business community, particularly SMMEs, must be the ones driving the economy. Government's role is to create an enabling environment, fair, transparent one. We want social justice. We cannot really be a society where we are known by the world to be the most unequal society in the world. So we've got to work towards building a very strong middle class so that 15, 20 years down the line, South Africa, it's a country where majority of its citizens are in the middle class category and an inclusive source. And we also want to have an inclusive economy where you use incentives to create that inclusivity than punishment that we see with the current ANC government. We want the rule of law. You've been discussing this with your previous guest. The almost complete breakdown of the rule of law. We have to give priority to make sure that you commit crime in South Africa, there will be consequences. Lastly, it's the electoral reform. We want South Africans to be the ones deciding who sits in parliament, who sits in council. People cannot be public representatives decided upon on the basis of having criminal activity. Because some of the parties, you have to have a criminal background, so that because you've got to have smaller nyana thing. You've had a party run based on having smaller nyana thing, so that you can hold one another against saying, no, you can't talk because here's a file. No, we want the communities to be the ones actually electing public representatives.
Herman Mashaba, the founder and chairperson of the People's Dialogue. Always good to talk with you, Herman, and we'll be following the progress of your party and your Macron moment, perhaps, for this country into the future. Thank you for joining us again on Rational Radio. We're now moving over to the final discussion of the day. Thank you, Herman. And I'd ask Woolley Lateghan and Ryan Woolley, please, to come through. Woolley, if you could switch your video camera on. There we go. There we go. Woolley is the chief executive of Hollard Insure. Hollard Insure has decided to, well, over the weekend, I don't know if we can say that you guys all caved, but up until this point, the insurance industry, with the exception of OUTsurance, seemed to be pretty direct in its response towards business interruption insurance. What changed your mind? I know you haven't said yet that you're going to meet all claims for business interruption insurance, but you did come out before others and say that you would now at least be paying some of those claims.
Yeah, thank you, Alec, and thank you for inviting me here. So I think important that the announcement that we've made over the weekend was not around paying some of these claims. I'll come back to that. But that we believe about the dire strait that specifically small businesses are finding themselves in, and that we've committed to make to policyholders of Hollard unconditional payments for relief amounting to approximately 250 million. Whilst that allow us the time to get the legal clarity about whether these pandemic is actually insurable and are covered by the policy contracts.
That is a big change, though, from what was previously, or the stance that most insurers previously had, led by Santam. Santam followed you, by the way, as you well know, on Sunday, and said it too would be paying out some claims, but it gave some more detail. Santam says 25,000 minimum, 1.5 million maximum. Have you got those kind of details as well?
Yes, Alec. Just to we still believe that not only in South Africa but globally, that government lockdowns and the regulations are not insurable and not covered by the policies. But in the meantime, whilst we have to go through the court process to get that clarity, we want to make relief payments to specifically small businesses. So we've communicated on Friday night to our broker community a set of guidelines about customers that we want to cover. We want to focus on, as I say, everybody that's Hollard policyholders that's got this benefit, irrespective of the sector within they find themselves. But clearly they would be biased towards the small business and the hospitality sector. That's the most impacted. So we would look at the 3 months of trading, businesses with a reduction in revenue of 30% and more, the months of April, May, and June. And then we've set a set of guidelines to what we will be looking to pay. We think that would, for example, a third of our client base in that sector actually cover 100% of the losses that they've had in those 3 months. As I said, we've set aside approximately 250 million, and we'll deal with individual cases on merit. Let's see if you want to have more details about the guidelines that we've set out.
Yeah, well, I'm just thinking, I'm wondering why it took you so long to break ranks, because A.D. Enthoven, the owner of the business, and the chairman, your chairman, is very involved in business for South Africa. He knows exactly what's going on the ground. He can see from that vantage point the difficulties that smaller businesses are going through. We on Biznews for over 6 weeks now have been talking about the problems that smaller businesses have had. And now suddenly, after all this pressure, you guys are only now coming through. I'm confused, because your reputational damage, not just to yourselves, but to all insurance companies due to your behavior, must have been extreme.
Yeah, Alex, it's a complex matter, not only here, but in many places in the world. I think the first is that policies with a benefit, where a client has been impacted directly, we have dealt with those claims. We've paid them many millions of claims like that. But there's a segment of the policies that's grey, where there's not legal clarity, and clearly we don't have agreement whether the policy should perform those. And it's for that segment of clients that we've now decided it's time to assist them to ensure that we can have a meaningful impact on some of them.
I'm going to bring in Ryan Woolley now. I see we don't have your camera, Mr. Woolley, but perhaps you can. You've been fighting on behalf of the companies that have been claiming business interruption insurance. Are you happy with what Willy's told us? Are you happy with the Hollard approach?
Well, I think the reality is that it's a start, and I'm sure that there are some businesses that are going to be very grateful for the amounts that have been put forward. We're it's been 4 months since this broke. I think that we're as frustrated as our clients are, that we keep on hearing about legal certainty. We've had a court case that dealt with the issue very crisply. We've also then had the FSCA weigh in, and the FSCA is the regulator for the industry, and they've advised the insurers including Hollard, to pay these claims. You know, it seems that Hollard have gone back with the insurers collectively and tried to, you know, lobby the FSCA to try and accept a lesser scenario where, you know, they could make these relief measures to kind of help, you know, the reputational damage. But I think the damage has been done, and I think the only thing that's going to repair it is obviously if these claims are paid in full, or a sensible compromise or a sensible settlement is looked at. You know, most of Hollard's clients, you know, the wordings are quite wide. It gives a cover for quarantine as well. You know, and you've got, you know, a lot of them are only exposed to R1 million per policy holder. You know, I think that there's a large segment that that could be looked after. The FSCA gives them the option to either settle these claims on a sensible basis or to make this relief gesture. And, you know, I think that the issue is that, you know, it goes some way, but it doesn't go far enough.
But you have been saying from the outset that you would advise, because of the extent of these claims, it's in nobody's interest if the whole insurance industry goes belly up, and there's no insurance industry left in South Africa. And you've been telling us anyway that you would advise that this would be negotiated and a sensible settlement were made. What is sensible, or, in your opinion, and have the insurance companies? We'll ask Mr. Lategan to respond in a moment. Have the insurance companies still got the ability, given the recent court case, to make this kind of a settlement?
So for us, you know, it would depend on the facts of each of the claimants, but anywhere from 40 to 70% of the value of the total settlements would be manageable. You know, we've offered payment terms. We've said 50% upfront and the balance over a period of time, which the clients can finance. You know, we've given the mechanisms there for the local insurers to step up to the plate, settle these claims, restore the trust in the industry, and take on the reinsurers. If the reinsurers really are the issue, you know, why should we be held to ransom because of it? Surely it should be our insurers, our South African insurers, taking on those international reinsurers.
Mr. Lategan, let's maybe just address those three issues in the times that we've got available. The one was the court case against Cafe Chameleon in Cape Town was pretty comprehensive. It was like if you're playing tennis, it was 6-love against the insurance company. And the other issue here is the potential to reduce the reputational risk by settling a percentage of the claims. And of course, the third one is the regulators already said, please guys, do pay these claims, and but you seem to have had some kind of agreement with them. Would you mind addressing those three for us?
Yeah, Alec, and I'll deal with them in a different set of order. So we've had constructive engagement between the regulators over the last few weeks, and you know, some of these relief payments that we make did emerge from those discussions where we volunteered this. But I think we also were able to get agreement with both the Prudential Authority and the Conduct Regulator about how important it is to get legal clarity and to do that at the Supreme Court. And we know that that might take some time, but we've got agreement also on the urgency of that, and appreciating the impact that that has on the small businesses. That's where the relief payment has come in. It's by no means a settlement. I think we also appreciate that it's by no means can be meaningful to all, and that's why we've got a bias towards the small and medium businesses. And I think that helps us to segue into the second one in terms of, you know, a settlement. If I look at the policyholders that we've got, that's got these benefits, you know, range from a small business to quite large listed businesses. And we don't think that any of those businesses would agree to a settlement, and we would in any case end up to court. So I do believe that, you know, legal clarity is essential from the small to the large, but also for the insurers. You know, as Ryan has mentioned, we've got the reinsurers that support us, and they don't only play in South Africa, they play in the UK, US, Europe. So it's quite important that there's consistent legal outcome, and to give us also our rights in terms of that. And I think the last piece in terms of comfort, you know, should the real outcome be that these are insurable events and the policy should perform, we would step up and perform to our obligation.
Are you able to afford it? In other words, the intimation or suggestion that the claims are so large that insurance companies in South Africa would all go bankrupt before because they don't have the resources to pay it. Are you telling us that that's not the case?
Yeah, I don't think the intention of this cover was any time to cover for a period of a lockdown, some of which is still uncertain to come, and to an extent, that quantification of claims is still developing. And I think that it's significant numbers. If it was a lot smaller, I think it would have been a lot easier. But as I've mentioned, a lot of what we've got is insurer capital. We also get cover from reinsurers, and it's essential for us to ensure that we aligned in terms of the reinsurance performance to the insurer performance.
What Mr. Woolley said a moment ago is that the reinsurers are effectively saying don't pay. Is that true?
No, I haven't, from a Hollard perspective, have any engagement from that perspective. We're in constant communication with them, shared our interpretation, our policy wordings, and they would follow whatever the legal outcome is. Definitely in terms of what we've understood from Hollard specific perspective. But I think similar as, the individual client's policy wordings, even reinsurance wordings are quite different.
Just a final question here from Do Pinar. He says, a statement for Mr. Lategan: when you and fellow insurers took our money, it was not on a relief basis. Could you not just repay his premiums? I'm sure that most people who've been insured have thought that they were covered against this. It could have been an underwriting mishap. If I make a mistake in my business and it's a bad enough mistake, well, I have to suffer the consequences. Is that not what we are facing here?
I think we have to get the legal clarity to be able to make that comment, but to the question, I think the relief measure is totally removed from the performance of the policy. That's something that we do to try and keep businesses afloat and keep jobs in South Africa, which I think is essential. And it was quite mentioned in the previous speakers on this platform. And when the legal clarity is there and it's a valid claim, we will do so.
Woolley Lategan is the Chief Executive of Hollard Insure. Thank you for joining us today. You also heard from Ryan Woolley, Insurance Claims Africa, who's been fighting on behalf of a number of those people who have been insured. I'm Alec Hogg until Rational Radio next Monday. It's time for me to say goodbye. But before we do that, Stuart, do you have some details of where we'll have the recording or where the recording will be?
Excellent. Thanks, Alec, and to all the guests as always. A lovely show. I put the YouTube channel on the chat bar on the control panel, Alec. We'll post this webinar as soon as it's been processed onto that channel. And then I've also added tomorrow's premium global share portfolio link for anyone who's listening today who's not registered yet, obviously for your monthly update. But that's it from my side.
Thanks, Stu. Yep. And just as a little point to everybody, that once you register, we'll remind you about these webinars. It doesn't mean that you have to come to every one of them, but it does give you that update a day before and an hour before in case you can join us. And tomorrow, please do try and join us. We've got 3 new stocks we're adding to the global portfolio. It's likely to be a very interesting session. And it's only once a month that we look at the global portfolio. Of course, Rational Radio every Monday at noon. I'm very happy to have been with you today. I'm sure that there was lots of food for thought. Until the next time, cheerio.